So our inverse order of operations, we take our GEMDOS and it becomes SAD-MEG. Now remember, Meg is sad because she had to do the inverse order of operations. But what's happening here? Well, my GEMDOS, I did groupings first, then exponents, then multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. With SAD-MEG, when I'm dealing with an equation, I start with any subtraction and additions that need to be dealt with. Then I do subtractions and additions, then division and multiplication, then exponents, and then groupings. All right, so what's important right here is that exponents also includes our radicands. Because radicands, as you will learn later, and I think we talked about expressing them as an exponent. And if not, we'll talk about that when you get into algebra. So radicands are actually a type of exponent and get dealt with in that exponent part of our process. So let's look at some equations and how we would deal with those. So example 1 in your book, they ask us to solve the one we just did. So we'll walk through it again really fast. So I have the square root of x equals 5. I have no additions. I have no subtractions. I've got no multiplications. The first thing I can deal with is that exponent issue. So an exponent could be put here to square that. If I square one side, I have to square the other side. I've got to keep my scale balanced. So I'm balancing my scale. Well, when you square a square root, that means square root x times square root x, which would just be x. This would be x is equal, 5 squared is 25, and I have my answer. And you always do a check. So we check and say if I put it back into the original equation, is the square root of 25 equal to 5? Yes, it is. That checks out. So that's what we're doing with these equations. Let's take a look at another example from your book. So in example 2, it tells us that the square root of x is equal to negative 8. And we say, okay, we'll approach this one the same way. So last time I squared this side, always use parentheses for that, by the way. Well, the square root of x squared is x, and negative 8 squared is positive 64. So x is equal to 64. Awesome. We say we're done. Check, 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 and check. Square root 64. Well, the square root of 64 is not negative 8. Square root of 64 is positive 8. Those are not equal. Therefore, this is not a valid solution. So what we say then is we say there is no solution. Or more appropriately, no real number solution. There is an imaginary solution, but we're not talking about that right now. So for our purposes, we'll say no solution.